TGIF here on the Auburn Blitz podcast, and we're glad that you tune us in every single day here on the Auburn podcast, Auburn Blitz podcast. Randy, good to see you here on a Friday. We made it to the end of another week. How about that? We're just a little bit closer to the end of this football season. For some, it's a joyous end. For others, it hadn't been a joyous end, and maybe Auburn can make it a joyous end. With the last two football games. You got A&M tomorrow at 6:30. We'll talk a little bit more about that game as we have all week long, kind of dive into what we think Auburn needs to do tomorrow to get a win against this A&M team, maybe look at some of their players a little bit more in depth, especially on the offensive side of the football. You and I talked about some stats yesterday with this Auburn team comparable to to Texas A&M and what we do well versus what they do well, and vice versa. So big recruiting weekend. This is it. I mean, this is the last hurrah for Auburn having visitors at a football game on campus. And could you end it any better? Could you have a better setting? A top 15 team coming in to Jordan-Hare Stadium at night, going to have a boatload of five-star visitors on campus. A lot of commitments and a lot of guys that have not committed that are still, very much in the mix with Auburn. So you got a chance to really shine Saturday and leave them walking out of Jordan-Hare Stadium with a great picture of maybe the future, or you may have them walking out going, I just don't know if I want to jump into this, Randy. That's how big Saturday is.
Well, we hate to keep making a massive deal out of Saturday, but I think it's impossible not to. When you've got Tuscaloosa and Alabama on the horizon, and they seem to be playing their best football of the season, and we haven't gone over there and won a football game since 2010. So the expectation of going over and doing that's got to be very, very low. But this is a very winnable football game on Friday against the Texas A&M team that we've been at least equal to over the last decade, and need to take advantage of that. But it can go both ways, Brett. You bring up a couple of different points. It can go positive for Auburn if we were to win that football game and have the rabid fan base that we know we're going to have, and have a night game atmosphere that can close the deal on some of those guys. But on the other side, if we don't show up to play, we have some of the same issues that we've been having on the offensive side of the ball. It could go the opposite way, because I'm sure that there are recruits that are checking us out. Deuce Knight being one that's really at least talking a lot to Ole Miss. Now, whether anything comes out of that, we don't know, but I can assure you that what we do the last couple of games will matter to some of these guys. Maybe not to all, and maybe not to all the guys that we currently have on campus, but at a certain point, you've got to really take a giant leap forward. I was going to say a step forward, but we need a giant leap forward. And Hugh Freeze got to get some positive momentum, not the consistent talk on press conferences and pre-games of how much of a rebuilding project he has still currently at Auburn. At a certain point, you got to go. I'm at the end of year 2. We do have the transfer portal. NIL is in play. I don't have a lot of excuses left. And I think Auburn fans are getting really close to needing to hear that from Hugh Freeze and his staff, and see if the play can result to some wins on the field, especially at Jordan-Hare.
Wednesday, December 4th is the early signing period day. You can sign Wednesday through Friday. Look, depending on how we play Saturday, and then even in the Iron Bowl, will depend on how stressful that last week going into that signing day is. Right now, according to 24/7, and again, we'll have Jason Caldwell on the program with us today at noon, so we're looking forward to that. And I'm about to go on Gary Harris's show at 10:30, and I know Gary's going to talk about this with me. And if you look at the top 5 in 24/7, which we really follow because, again, Jason's one of our good friends, and we think the world of him. We think they do it as good or better than anybody when they cover Auburn. Georgia's number 1, Ohio State's 2, Alabama's 3, Texas is 4, and Auburn's 5 right now, with LSU and Tennessee behind them at 6 and 7. I want you to just look at that. There's one team in the top 7 that's not in the SEC. You literally could be 7th in the country in recruiting and be 6th in the conference. Auburn is sitting at 5th. It's the highest we've been in a long time, with 27 commitments. Still got room for more, like a Justice Terry, big offensive lineman over there in Georgia that a lot of people feel like is going to go to Georgia. But he's going to be in Auburn Saturday. And Auburn needs offensive linemen, and he's got a lot of connections with some of these guys that are going to be there, that are going to be hosting him. It's a big day for Auburn to sell him. You know, it's not a given that he's going to – look, there's nothing a given anymore. We just saw the decommitment from LSU to Michigan in the quarterback. I mean, you may think you got somebody hammered down, but the NIL world has changed the game. But it also makes a difference when you are a place somebody wants to go. Okay? Mm-hmm. Okay, you know, money is a lot, and it's a majority of what these guys are doing. But if it's an environment, if it's a culture you want to be a part of, you know, that weighs in too. And so in the relationships with coaches. So that's just one. You know, you're going to have Neem Alford in Auburn. He's a part of that number 2 Ohio State recruiting class that Auburn has made a vow they do not want to let get out of the state of Alabama from Parker High School. He'll be there. As you just mentioned, Deuce Knight, he'll be back in Auburn. He's making these long trips every week to come to Auburn. He was there last week to watch ULM. I mean, he wants to be in Auburn, but Auburn's got to show him the progress, Randy. So that's just a few. Jared Smith, he'll be back in Auburn from Thompson High School. Phenomenal defensive end prospect. Was over in South Carolina last week. He's been visiting. We see what South Carolina's doing defensively right now. You got Malik Autry right down the road at Opelika. He's going to be back in Auburn, but he's been visiting Florida a lot. I mean, and you don't blame these guys. These guys need to go out and visit, and they need to take advantage to make sure they're choosing the right place. But, I mean, these are some of these guys that we just named are already committed to Auburn that are still taking visits, and then you still got some out there like Justice Terry and Neem Alford that's trying to make a decision whether they want to give Auburn a shot or not.
Well, let's don't kid ourselves. The only reason that I think so many people are still semi-positive about Hugh Freeze is his recruiting. We're not getting the results on the field, so we've got to grasp a hold of something, and right now that's recruiting. And his past doesn't give you also some real rosy feeling that his coaching is going to bring a lot of championships in the SEC. I said that when we hired him. But he has proven to be a wonderful recruiter, and he's got to close things out because that's the reason he's at Auburn. And it is a rebuilding project, I guess, year in and year out at Auburn. And with us grabbing onto that, we got to know that he needs to be a magician and close things out and keep the guys that we currently have on campus and hope and pray that we get better Bows and Joes than we're playing against, because if we don't, I don't feel like we're out coaching anybody right now. I don't know about you.
You're not going to get better Bows and Joes. I mean, you're going to get what you hope to get is equal Bows and Joes to all those programs I just named. Now, you may have a player here and there that's better than what they have and vice versa, but what you got to be doing is recruiting on that level. I mean, your Bows and Joes have to equal Ohio State and Alabama and Georgia and Texas. And Auburn right now is doing that. They're equal to them. I mean, not a dime's difference really in these classes up here. And Auburn's got to keep them. You know, they got to hold on to them.
It was the biggest problem we had with Brian Harsin. It wasn't the play on the field, which wasn't great either. But Hugh Freeze's play on the field, if anything's worse than Brian Harsin's regime at Auburn. But it was the lack of recruiting, the lack of any vision forward on what he was doing, especially in the state of Alabama with high school recruits, that we had the good fortune of being. I would guess you travel the state more than anybody in and out of these high schools outside of the colleges that are recruiting them. You've got to be in and out of more high schools than anybody in the state, Brett. And you know how important it is when you go into these places that they see these coaches. And that was the biggest problem we had with Brian Harsin, is he was not making inroads in the state of Alabama. And but he's gone, and Hugh Freeze is. And that is the positive. But if that is the positive, and that's what we need to embrace here with him as coach, he's got to close things out, Brett. He can't lose a lot of these guys. We can't drop to 10 to 15 in recruiting. because 10 to 15 in recruiting at Auburn University right now,
Oh, it's disastrous. It's
you're
disastrous.
losing. You're losing. So we're up at 5 because of 3, 4, 5 of these key guys that we've got. We've got to retain them. And the talks I have, I think we are going to retain. We may lose one here or there, but I think we're going to retain most of them. And I think we may pick up a couple of more before the cycle's out.
Yeah, I think there's some guys that we haven't even talked about yet that Auburn's going to end up with in this class that is going to help booster and bolster this class on up. Let me say something positive. We've been talking about the program as a whole. If I'm a defensive guy, I love what I'm seeing. If I'm a defensive player, if I'm Jared Smith, man, I love what I see in this DJ Durkin defense, man. I want to go play on that defensive line. If I'm Malik Autry, I want to go play on that defensive line. I mean, because look at Malik Blockton, and look at Keldrick Fault right now. And I know we've got Keldrick's brother coming in, Jacaleb. But, again, I love Auburn's defense. Randy, they're ranked 13th or 12th in the country, depending on which one you're looking at. I mean, when was the last time we had a top 15 defense that shut people down the way we're shutting people down right now? I mean, again, the overall perspective of Auburn's football season has been negative because of the record and the play offensively. But, man, the defense has a ton of bright spots, man. And like you and I talked about yesterday, I mean, a lot of these guys are freshmen. And a lot of these guys are DeMarcus Riddick and Jay Crawford and Malik Blockton, and the list goes on, with a few transfer portal guys smattered in there, like Mausi and some of those guys. But for the most part, there's a lot of freshmen contributing to this defense, and, man, they're playing their ass off, man. And if I'm a defensive guy, I love what I'm seeing if I'm a recruit right now.
Well, I think that's what we're selling, and I think it may be the reason that we close on a couple of these other guys. Because you bring up Jay Crawford, you add Alford to that group.
Man,
you add those safeties that we've got committed to that group. Because these two safeties we've got committed, I know we've got more secondary players committed, but Fagans, he's a real deal. He's a playmaking safety in high school. When you look down and you've got a safety that's not only making 6 to 8 tackles a game, maybe even a little more at times, but he's blocking punts. He's intercepting balls, taking them into touchdowns. He's picking up fumbles and taking them for touchdowns. Brett, those are difference makers. And safeties a lot of times have the chance to do that. And Winters coming up from Enterprise, I've seen this kid 3 or 4 times. I think that's a good Enterprise team, but I don't think it's a great Enterprise team. But he jumps off the field amongst a lot of great athletes in 7A. I watched the majority of that Opelika game, and Opelika could have won it going away. They won the game easily, but I still thought the best football player on the field was Winters. I think he's that good a player. And so our secondary has a chance to be as good as we've had in a very long time. And we've had some great secondary players. Look at the NFL. Auburn's got them all throughout the NFL, some really good players. But I think we got a chance right here with the youth that we've got coming in to be exceptionally good on the defensive side of the ball. And I'm all here for it. That's an identity that you and I grew up with. Auburn football in the 80s was defensive minded. We're going to run it down your throat. And I'd love to see us get a little bit more back to that culture, because I think that's a winning culture in the South.
Absolutely. Defense, I mean, the stars of this class to me are defense. Blake Woodby, cornerback, Anquan Fagans, Eric Winters, Antonio Coleman, who flipped back and forth between Auburn and Alabama several times, but you got him right now. Nathaniel Marshall, big defensive lineman, coming in from Oak Park, Illinois. Jordan Crawford from that Parker team. Randy, there's a ton of great defensive guys. And look, if I'm a defensive guy, man, I'm great. You know what? If I'm Elijah Menendez from Florida, I'm good, man. I like the way that linebacking core is playing. I can't wait to get to Auburn. What we're trying to sell is this offense. We went out and hit a home run on offense last year in this recruiting class with these wide receivers. And, unfortunately, the quarterback play has limited their production. And we were worried about that because Hugh Freeze made the decision not to go to the portal and get somebody. We've all had to suffer through this. I'm not putting it all on Peyton Thorne's back, okay? But a lot of it is he's a fifth-year guy, and he's had opportunities to make plays in key situations, and he hasn't done it, okay? So he hasn't performed up to the elite. I just watched a guy last night talk about it on a national show, and they said exactly what I said to you the other day. I said, Auburn's roster is better than Miami's, but the difference is Cam Ward and Peyton Thorne. He said, look at what Vegas is saying. And you and I talked about it the last 3 days. It's only a 2.5-point favorite for A&M. A number 15 team, man, coming in against an unranked team is only 2.5-point favorites. It shows you that everybody knows Auburn's a better team than what their record shows. And that maybe Texas A&M isn't as good as their record shows. You broke that down yesterday saying they've been able to win the close ones and we haven't. That's the difference in the records. So there's a lot here at play. This is not like we're walking in tomorrow going, oh, well, we got to make some fluky plays to have a chance. Man, we should be able to line up and match Texas A&M. And if Peyton Thorne can make some plays and the offensive coaching staff can help him, Randy, Auburn can win this football game, I think, no problem at home with what Texas A&M's bringing in here.
Do I think they can? Do I think they will? I've got my doubts. I hate to be a negative Nancy, but until we prove that we're not going to put a Vanderbilt performance up there offensively in Jordan-Hare Stadium again, then my expectations are muted. And it's only on the offensive side. I think our defense will give us a great opportunity to win, but I have no earthly idea what we're going to come out and try to do offensively. Are we going to run Jarquez Hunter? Who knows? Are we going to have Peyton Thorne throwing the football down the field and try to get the football to Cam Coleman 7 or 8 times in the ball game? Who the hell knows? I mean, that's the biggest problem that I have with this Auburn football program. I'm going to keep saying it because I've been saying it for a decade plus. You go out and you hire an offensive-minded head coach, and the offense is your problem. It's a head-scratcher, Brett. And I still – a decade into these Gus Malzahn type coaches, I have no clue what our identity is. And I think it changes from week to week. And until you can embrace who you are and what you want to be and not have it change from week to week, it's very hard to have any confidence going in that you know what we're going to do. I mean, you know what we're going to do Saturday? You got any idea offensively what we're trying to do?
Never.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
You know what? That should be tough on other teams, shouldn't it? I mean, it's like, why do I prepare for this? You know, like if you're an opposing team, you're like, what do I do to prepare for this Auburn offense? I don't know if they're going to come out and, do the RPO, if they're going to try to run it 40 times or what they're going to do. I mean, it's all over the map. So you're right. Let's look at some of Texas A&M's key guys, and we'll start with Le'Veon Moss, the running back there. He's got 765 yards rushing on the season. He averages 6.3 yards a carry. Very serviceable running back. Nothing great. 10 touchdowns on the season. He's been a stalwart back there. But then it comes down to the freshman quarterback in Marcel Reed. Marcel Reed got the start a few weeks ago. He's a freshman. This is another freshman. We saw a freshman in Oklahoma come in, and, it wasn't that he did anything to win the game. It was really Auburn lost it, but he was able to do enough to get Oklahoma out of there with a win. His numbers, nothing special. 1,129 yards passing, 9 touchdowns, 2 picks. That's pretty doggone good, but a very efficient quarterback. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. That's the thing that has garnered him that starting position. But Noah Thomas is their leading receiver. He's only got 26 catches on the season for a little under 400 yards. So, I mean, if you compare their guys to our guys, I mean, we beat them in every category. Again, it comes down to making plays at the key times to do what you got to do to win the football game. So that's just something that you got to figure out how to win football games instead of lose them, and that's what Auburn's been doing.
Well, I think this is an easy one. There's 2 stats that I think Texas A&M own us in, and it's a very disheartening couple of stats when you're an Auburn fan. As long as you and I have been, this is not a strength for Auburn. But They're running the football for 215 yards per game, whereas we're running the football for 175 a game. I can't be convinced that they're 40 to 50 yards per game better than our rushing attack when we lean on it and give the football to Jarquez Hunter a little bit more. So that's one stat. But the biggest stat here in this ball game that's worth watching is red zone offense. They're the best in the conference. We're one of the worst in the conference, if not the worst in the conference. And if that's a stat that you can look at all the rest of this stuff, Brett, but if they get into the red zone and they score touchdowns and kick field goals, and we get in the red zone, we're about 50-50. You're not going to win a lot of football games that way. And what that tells me is that extra 40 to 50 yards rushing that they've got coming a game, they're able to do that inside the red zone. And they're able to get the football into the end zone playing power football when the field closes in, inside the 10-yard line, inside the 5-yard line. Do I have to go to a passing game to get the football in the end zone? My guess, without even watching Texas A&M, that is not what they're doing. They're powering the football in the end zone once they get in the red zone, and that's probably the biggest stat going in and probably the biggest one that we need to watch.
Yeah, let me update. You know, when I was going through that, Le'Veon Moss went down in that South Carolina game with a leg injury. So it could be doubtful that he plays in this game.
Saw that.
So, you know, again, they haven't said he's out, okay? But there's a good chance that he's not. If he plays, it's not going to be full strength. So they're going to have to go to their second guy in Amari Daniels. We'll see how that impacts. That could be a big deal. Okay, I mean he has been a stalwart back there for them, and all that you just talked about, running the football and cashing in the red zone and all that could impact it, especially when you have a freshman quarterback back there. So we'll watch that. Wayne just asked, is Moss out? That's the update I have. Nothing definitive, but possibly not going to play. Jerron said, do you men think we go out and get a real OC that will look Freeze in the face and put a game plan together from week to week? We got to have a change on that side of the ball. I don't. I don't think he'll ever turn that over.
No, it's not that I don't think he'll turn it over. I don't think he'll hire anybody that will second guess him. I don't think he's that type of individual. Maybe I'm wrong by that. I'm just going off of character types. And my feel on Hugh Freeze, he doesn't like a lot of people telling him where he's wrong and what he's deficient on. Am I wrong by that? And with that, you tend to go and get guys that you're comfortable with. You know, that staff that he retained from Auburn, I heard all of the buzz in the background on issues that were going on, but I think probably part of what was really going on was some of those guys that had been holdovers, that had watched what we had done and had built somewhat of an identity with Cadillac that last part of the season, right, where we were playing physical downhill football, the type of football that us Auburn people love to watch and can embrace. That when he ran completely away from that you're going to have some inner turmoil. And so he got rid of all of them. And they were the scapegoats on last year's team. And he took back over the play calling. And just like Gus Malzahn, every time that he took back over the play calling, the only option he's got whenever the play calling's not working out when you're doing it as the head coach is to say, well, I'm sorry, I need to be more of a CEO. I can't do all of this. And let me go out and get another offensive coordinator. I'm hopeful he will. You know, I brought up a couple of names in the last week of names that I think would be good fits. Do I think he does it? Probably not. I think he's going to keep calling the plays and keep blaming it on something when it's not going well. Because I think he's calling 95% of the plays right now. I could be totally off by that. Do you feel that way? You
literally could substitute what we're talking about right now for what we said 8 years ago.
It's exact same thing.
I mean, I've never seen anything like it, dude. I mean, I feel like I'm in a never-ending spinning cycle out of control that you just can't get out of the cyclone. You just can't get out of this same narrative. And we keep going back and hiring people that want to keep doing the same thing that we've been doing the last 8 to 10, 15 years. I mean, Jerron just said Gus 2.0. We've been saying that for years.
Yeah. I think Gus is a better on-field and locker room football coach than Hugh Freeze. And I think Hugh Freeze is a little bit better recruiter than Gus Malzahn. Outside of that, they're the imps of one another. I like Gus Malzahn 10 times more as a person. I'm just going to be brutally honest. There was no part of me that disliked anything that Gus Malzahn. He wouldn't give you much, but I thought he was a tremendous human being. So I'm not saying I don't know Hugh Freeze well enough to say that anything negative, but I do sense that what Gus Malzahn did with his locker room and the kids that he had around said a lot about him as a person. And I thought we ran a clean program. We just never could embrace any particular type of identity that could consistently win the big football games while he was at Auburn. Jerron, you're dead on. I mean, you sound like us when you comment. It sounds like you're just added into mine and Brett's conversations constantly that it is the imps of what we got, except a slightly better job recruiting than what we got under Gus Malzahn.
John Paul said, did the football program regret not hiring Cadillac as the head coach?
I don't know about that. I did think he did a wonderful job. I do think the fan base was ready to embrace him. Could he have surrounded himself with defensive and offensive guys that could have helped him take the step forward as a head coach when he really hasn't been that before? Possibly. I would have not had a problem with it at the time. But again, we're Auburn. I've been dealing with this a long time. I'm the same guy that sat up there and probably reposted a picture with Deion Sanders in Auburn gear 50 times. Just to let everyone know that I'm out on the limb saying that this would be a wonderful hire. Could you imagine Deion Sanders with Bruce Pearl? I said it over and over. From a marketing and salesmanship standpoint, you couldn't have asked for two guys that would have sold your program any better. But no, we're at Auburn. We tend to make decisions that are backroom decisions by people that we trust are Auburn folks. And unfortunately, on the football side, it's getting us the results we deserve.
All right. For just a second, I want to remind everybody to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're seeing that number go up every day. And a lot of new people on here that comment, and we appreciate it. If you love the content and you like what we do every day, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Would love to have you as a regular, and we always appreciate the comments that you guys throw out there. So I just wanted to do that for just a second. All right, back at it. Jerron said we should regret not giving Deion a strong look. And right, I mean, I don't know how much of a look we did give him. I don't remember any really conversation going on between any Auburn administration and Deion Sanders or his camp. I'm sure.
I think talking heads like us talked more about it than anyone internally did.
Right.
I don't know who was the main ones internally that were like, no, we're not going down that path. But my guess it's some of the same ones that internally have made some of the choices we've had over the last 12 to 15 years. And keep saying it. I mean, we get the results we deserve a lot of times as Auburn fans.
And there's already, and we're not talking coaching change here. I mean, because Hugh Freeze isn't going anywhere this year, and I'm glad. We need to keep our recruiting going in the right direction. He just needs to get the offense figured out. I really think that's what defense. I love it. DJ Dirk, I think he made a great hire. I think it's going well. I have no problems with that. Got to get the daggum offense figured out. And this is a good roster, and he's going to add to this good roster. We're starting to get a roster that looks like a championship pedigree type roster with the depth and the type of players that we're going to have. But got to get that figured out. And next year the seat's going to be hot. But here's where I was going. There's a lot of schools already talking about coaching changes and who are they going to go get and the coaching carousel. And it sure is nice when you're not involved in that, is what I'm saying. Even though we've had a crap season, knowing that we're not having to go back down that path this year. But next year, if things don't get better, we'll probably be right back in that pool again, because I don't think you can continue to accept mediocrity. Again, going through coaching changes is one thing. Alabama did it a bunch until they found Nick Saban. You can't just say, well, we've done this, 3 times in the last 5 years. We can't do it again. Yeah, you can, because if you can't get it right and the guy that you pick is terrible, then you got to go try again. You can't just sit there and accept, well, we got to let time go by because we've been doing this the last 3 or 4 years. You gotta strike when you feel like the iron is hot, and you've also got to say, if it's inevitable, we got to do it immediately. So next year will be the year that we discuss that, and if the wins come, we won't even be discussing that. You know how Auburn is. If Hugh Freeze has a 9-win year next year, Randy, they'll be trying to give him a massive raise. I mean, I'm just saying what we've done to previous coaches. I mean, Gus Malzahn was about to get run out on a limb in 2016. He comes back with Jarrett Stidham in 2017, and they go to the SEC championship game, and he leverages the Arkansas thing against us and gets this monstrous raise and extension. And then it's right back to the same old Gus Malzahn from 18 to 20, and then we end up getting rid of it. I mean, it's the same path that we go down all the time. So who knows what the future will hold, but I hope Hugh Freeze can get it figured out offensively. But there's going to be a lot of coaching changes going on out there, Randy, here in a couple of weeks when the season's over.
Well, there has to be. It's just too important for these universities. Too much money that you're potentially losing by not putting a good quality product out there. And we've talked about it. We're kind of odd that the Auburn fan base will show up and support even when we're getting a mediocre product in football. We want in other sports. You go back to mediocrity in basketball. I hate to say it. You give it a couple of years of that, and you'll see where Auburn fan base quickly runs off. And I keep talking about our women's sports. Our tennis team, by the way, Brett, worth mentioning, really performing well. And we'll probably hit on that a little bit. But, our women's programs, you'll see. Watch Johnny Harris and watch this women's basketball program. People will start showing up, Brett. We start going. You have a 19-2 mark heading into, the depths of the SEC play. You'll see people running into that arena to watch that program. And we already saw it with softball. What Myers did with Auburn softball is proof positive that Auburn fans will find a winner quickly. But we'll stick in there. We'll pack that stadium out on Saturday night, hopeful that things are about to turn. But other programs aren't in that same vein, Brett. When it goes bad, it brings all the other programs down because it's the breadwinner. Football always will be the breadwinner, and if you don't have that right, you got to run out there and try to find somebody like Signetti at Indiana.
Right.
And there are those examples out there that make you want to keep trying until you find that right piece.
All right. Glad we're not trying to pick a coach this year, even though we're a little disheartened and disgruntled. I'm glad we're not going through that right now. All right, so finally, let's shift over to the high school playoffs. Third round action in 6A through 1A. 7A is down to the semifinal round. So after tonight, we'll know who's in the championship game for 7A. And after all the talk and all the great what ifs and all this, guess who's sitting there poised to go right back to the championship game again? Central Phoenix City and Thompson.
Yep.
Again, now, can Enterprise beat Thompson? Yeah, they can. They're 8-4. They're a solid team, though. All those losses coming in that region they play in, which is brutal. Hoover's got to travel over to Phoenix City. They've had a tremendous year based on all the turmoil they had in the offseason, but they're going to get a chance at the defending champs. And I talked to Pat Nix this past, on Monday, and they're ready to embrace the opportunity for Hoover. They know what Hoover is bringing in. It's going to be a big challenge, but you can see in Coach Nix's face that they're excited to have that playoff game at home. The last possible opportunity to play a game at home in front of their fans. And you and I know how crazy that place can be over there and how tough of an environment it can be to play in Phoenix City. So Hoover's going to have their work cut out for them. But I'm going to go ahead and predict that Phoenix City and Thompson will move on to rematch. And you know what? Thompson's got 3 losses, and they lost all 3 of them in overtime. Randy, and they never trailed at the end of. They really, all the teams they lost to have been nationally ranked. So everybody's 9-3 record isn't created equal. Okay, this is everybody. We want to say Thompson's had maybe a little bit of a step back, when in reality, I don't think they have. It just kind of looked that way. So I would say that Phoenix City and Thompson will find their way back to Birmingham in a couple of weeks.
Well, a couple of quick thoughts on 7A before we move into the others. I think parity in 7A is better than it's been over the last few years. I do think that there are teams like Enterprise and like Hoover, again, that can win these games, whereas I thought a few years ago that Phoenix City and Thompson were going to win by 30 points to head into the finals. I don't feel that way. The best team I've seen from 7A over the last few weeks is Thompson, though. And one of the key reasons, they've been great on defense, but Trent Seaborn's playing as good as anybody in the state right now. His stats, I get these stats. I name these athletes of the week for the HSA, Brett. Over the last 6 weeks, every week, it's massive numbers from Trent Seaborn. So whatever happened in the middle part of the year.
That's what was lacking. Yeah, that's what was lacking.
Whatever happened in the middle part of the year, because I don't think any of us that watched him play as an 8th grader and win the state championship game going away thought that he'd ever have a little run like he did middle part of the year, where it wasn't, he was one of the best players in the state, but he did. And Mark Freeman, and knowing what I know about him and offensive coaching staff that they've always been able to put together wherever he's been, whether it's Thompson, Spanish Fort, you name it, they've always been great offensively. They have found their way, Brett. So I'd be surprised if Thompson didn't run through the rest of this playoff bracket, but parity's really good. So I've been wrong before, and I could be wrong here.
Be fun to watch. If you can get out to one of those games tonight, you won't be disappointed, I can promise you. Okay, down in 6A, we'll go through these pretty quickly. Fort Payne will be at undefeated Oxford. It's a good Fort Payne team, though.
Great quarterback.
Yep.
Dax Von Odor, one of the best players in the state, has put up massive numbers, and he's been able to win football games late. Beat a very good Homewood team last week, so that's going to be a good game, Brett.
Hueytown will be at Pike Road. That's 2 9-3 teams.
Pike Road's playing as good as anybody right now. They also, the first part of the season, midway through the season, I thought they were taking a giant step back. They're not. And what they did to St. Paul's was eye-opening.
No doubt.
For them to beat St. Paul's by 30 with the defense watched St. Paul's.
That was a shocking performance.
Granger shook, and Pike Road and that program that's been built there is very impressive.
Muscle Shoals at Parker. Parker, that lone loss to Carrollton, Georgia, and Juju Lewis. That was a game that had 5-star talent all over the field for both Parker and Carrollton won it. But Parker will host Muscle Shoals, and Muscle Shoals, they just do what Muscle Shoals does every year. They seem to find their way to this round and just can't get over the hump. They got a tall task ahead of them with Parker.
Very good defensive team. Won the football game late last week with a fumble return for a touchdown where, they were looking like they were going to give up that touchdown to lose the ball game late, end up winning it by 10. They're just a great program. I think they're coached as well as anyone in the state at Muscle Shoals. They haven't gotten over the hump, but every year, Brett, it's 10, 11, 12 win seasons. And anybody around the state would appreciate getting over the hump and winning a state title. But as an Auburn University fan, knowing that every year you're going to go in and you're going to have a chance says something. And that's where Muscle Shoals' program is currently.
All right, here's a big one. 6A's been good to Spain Park. They're undefeated. They're 12-0. And they'll travel down to Saraland, who's been, the best team in 6A, save Clay Chalk for the last several years. They're both undefeated. Saraland's 11-0. Spain Park's 12-0. Spain Park's built to win a championship. They have everything you need to win it, from the lines of scrimmage to the quarterback to a dynamic receiver to 2 bowling ball running backs back there that can come in and out and just wear you down. They've got everything. They're the complete team, but this will definitely be their biggest test traveling down to Saraland.
Well, it could be a state championship really type game, and you get these in the third round from time to time. We're going to talk about it in 5A. I think the state championship game easily in 5A with Central Clay, and that matchup they've got with Catholic and Montgomery, that could easily be the state championship game. But back to 6A, Spain Park's the best line of scrimmage I've seen in Class 6A, and I've been covering this for going on 20 plus years. They're massive on both sides of the ball. They've got great pieces. They've got a quarterback that's committed to Clemson. I think they've got, from a numbers standpoint, the best receiver in the state, Brett. He's just explosive. Every week he's got some type of 70, 80-yard touchdown reception. But it's those two running backs that you were so impressed with. You talked about it when we broadcasted our Benjamin Russell game. You were impressed with everything else, but I think you were more impressed with the two pieces they had back there at running back. You couldn't really tell them apart who was in the ball game. Saraland and Spain Park could be – whoever wins this one could win a state title, and I feel like I would lean towards them winning it, whoever gets over this one.
I agree. I mean, I know people that are watching that are Oxford fans may say, hey, look, we just continue to win. And
I haven't seen them, so I don't have a good opinion.
Right. I just know that, they're 12-0, and they don't get a lot of talk. I mean, comparable. I mean, really. But you and I have seen these other ones, and Spain Park, again, like you said, I was very impressed with those two running backs. They won the football game. Anytime they needed to go get a first down, they just, and to credit that offensive line. They can't do it by themselves, but when you got two guys like that, most high schools would love to have one. They've got two of them. You just mentioned 5A. To me, could be the game of the week. Central Clay at Catholic. They moved that game to Faulkner University, for logistic reasons, whatever. So they'll have the home side of Faulkner kind of half and half. It's going to be an odd deal. Where the fans, there's a small away section over there, even for Faulkner, but they're going to split the home side and have, fans on both sides. I don't know how it's going to work out. A lot of times that can be a little bit sketchy, but I think everything will be fine. It's going to be a great football game. This is the immovable force versus the unstoppable object, right? I tell you, you look at it from a standpoint, something's got to give. Something's got to give tonight with these two teams. And Catholic's been on a crazy winning streak, and Clay County got one of their best teams at this particular Clay County, Central Clay County, not Ashland, but Central High School Clay County. This is probably the best team they put on the field. And that's saying a lot because, we saw them win a couple of state titles already with Danny Horn. And they had some good teams, but top to bottom, this may be the best one that he's put on the field. So looking forward to seeing how this one plays out tonight.
Skill set wise, I think it's the best one. Versatility back at quarterback, I think it's the best one. And their offensive coordinator, I thought, was a tremendous high school football player in Chase Horn. But, their quarterback in Gibbons right now, Brett, he beat us.
That's their closest game. It's their closest game.
It was Soap Gibbons that beat us.
Yeah.
We scored a touchdown to close the gap. May have tied the football game. Very first play out of the touchdown, they threw a 75-yard touchdown from Gibbons to Boyd, and that used to not be the case with Central Clay. They'd get the football back with 7 or 8 minutes left, and they'd ram that sucker down your throat and then score late. But Chase Horn's changed it, and I bragged on Chase a lot over the years, Brett. I can't get a feel what he's going to call. I think they're about to ram it down our throats, and he'll hit us over the top with a post pattern for 75 yards, and that is
right.
The change up with Central Clay. It's the best skill set guys. They always play really strong defensively. Coach Burkhalter can coach them up as good as anybody on that side of the ball. You and I know that very well. They're always good on the lines of scrimmage. Usually got a big running back that they can lean on. Brett, they've got 6 or 8 pieces, and they play on both sides of the football, and they can play up and down any classification. That's how good those skill players are for Central Clay, and Kurt Johnson does a tremendous job. May be doing as good a job as anyone in the state of Alabama at Montgomery Catholic. They don't lose football games. The only couple of football games they've lost have been in the playoffs over the last 4 or 5 years. Back to Jeremiah Cobb, Brett.
Right.
They'd run through the regular season and lose a third-round game. So
they still have the longest regular season winning streak going in the state. I think it's at 56 games.
I bet there'll be a big crowd out tonight. That'd be a good place to be for a high school football.
Well, you're going to draw people that aren't fans of either team. I mean,
Agreed.
You're going to get a lot of people that just want to go watch a good football game. All right, let's get through these. Corner at Leeds. That's a good football game there. Ramsey will go to Moody. I know Ramsey has really stepped it up coming down the stretch.
Spencer Unruh back there in the backfield was our male athlete of the week for corner. Rushed for 379 yards last week. His numbers are through the roof. They lean on him. The only game that corners lost is Briarwood. Briarwood had a really good game midway through the season when they got their running back. Ramsey's playing as good as anybody, Brett. You talked to them earlier in the year with our On the Road show. They got run out of the gym in that game, but since then they've righted the ship. That's what good programs do, and that's what Ramsey has done. You've also been to Moody. I can keep going. I think you've talked to all these coaches. You know better than I do. So, why don't you jump in there? But Johnston right there from Moody's just a big old lumberjack of a quarterback at 6'5" that has a Moody team that's got 5 or 6 guys that look like D1 prospects, and Jake Gaines does a tremendous job. So that's going to be – all of those games could go either way that I look at, and that's what you want by the third round.
Right. I mean, you and I touted Central Clay and Catholic being the game, but, hey, Ramsey and Moody and this team here, Viger, hey, they're all going to have something to say about what happens. And when you look down and Viger's 11-1 and they give up about 6 points a game, buddy, you better hold on, man. We've seen this story before, and UMS Wright, they've done a really good job of getting to this point. They're 6-6. It's all Terry Curtis and taking what he's got and doing what UMS Wright does. They show up and they expect to win, but I think they end tonight against a very, very good Viger team. But 5A is going to be fun to watch the next couple of weeks. All right, in 4A, Anniston at West Morgan, Cherokee County at Brooks, St. Michael at Fairfield, and Tallahassee will go to Jackson. And the season will probably end for Tallahassee, but this week or tonight. But I'm proud of that program turning it around. They didn't win but one football game last year, and then they hire L.A. O'Neill, and he comes in and he gets them to the third round of the playoffs.
He's done it in 2 places now. He can coach them up. He can get everybody on the same page, and he left Booker T in a great situation. I mean, Booker T. Washington had another tremendous year this year, the year after he left, and you're doing something right when you're building internally, that when you leave, the teams continue to play as well as they were when you were there. That means you did something right. So I'll be watching that one closely. Jackson, I think, the most talented team top to bottom, though, in any classification. If you take the enrollment number out and take the numbers out, I think Jackson's got as much talent as anybody in the state of Alabama.
I agree with that. All right, in 3A, it's Bayside Academy at Southside Selma. The Smith brothers, Derek and Eric Smith, that'll be fun to watch. Fife will go to Piedmont. You talk about a clash of titans, and they've had some epic matchups over the years. And Fife losing those 2 games early, they're on a roll again. And they're heading to Piedmont, who's undefeated at 12-0. And I remember a game a few years ago in 3A when Fife and Piedmont matched up in the rain at Piedmont. It was on TV, and it was a slop fest.
Yeah.
But Fife went over there and won that football game. So this will be another good one tonight between those two. Houston Academy. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to throw a couple of names for you to watch if you're paying attention. Raleigh Pinto for Piedmont. Every week it's 180 yards and a 70-yard punt return or a 65-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. A tremendous athlete for Piedmont. And Ryder Gibson's who Fife will plan to ride out. They get a running back, and they lost their superstar running back that's committed to Clemson. He's out with an injury, so now they're riding Ryder Gibson. And we saw it a couple of years ago.
We did.
The running back goes out, and then they find another one, and they keep running it right at you. And if you can't find a way to stop it, they can make winning ugly. So that's going to be a great football game against a couple of communities that know each other really well.
No doubt. Houston Academy at T.R. Miller. T.R. Miller has been number one since day one of the season, and going to take a good effort by somebody to knock them out. And then Winfield will go to Mars Hill. That's a battle of two 11-1 teams. Down in 2A, Randy, Cottonwood is undefeated. They travel to Reeltown at 11-1. That one loss was to T.R. Miller. This is going to be a heck of a football game tonight, too.
Cottonwood has a tremendous running back that's able to semi-carry them when needed. But Cottonwood on the defensive side of the ball is where their bread's buttered. They play a physical brand of football. I've named 2 or 3 of their defensive players as players of the week, so tells you the type of numbers that you're getting from that side of the ball. And we already know what Reeltown does. Reeltown's one of the best programs in the state of Alabama. They're there every year. It'll be a tough road trip for Cottonwood if they haven't made that one in quite some time.
Highland home, undefeated, will go to Ayrton. I mean, a potential rematch between that Highland home team and Reeltown if they both can win tonight. So Pisgah at Tuscaloosa Academy and Winston County at Sulligent. That rounds out 2A. And then 1A, Georgiana at Elba. Elba's 10-2. That's Alvin Henderson, Randy. He'll keep the A train rolling tonight, I think. And then Hackleburg will travel to Lynn. Maplesville with that 1-point win over Sweetwater last week. Man, that had to be a classic matchup. Sweetwater missed an extra point early in that game, and they chased that point the rest of the night, could never get over the hump. Maplesville will be at Milry, and then the Wadley Bulldogs, 10-0. They travel to Berry Fayette. Berry Fayette's 11-1.
Yeah.
It's a good football team there, but Wadley's been number one pretty much since day one in 1A.
Now, I can't imagine outside of Alvin Henderson that any of these teams match up the 2 or 3 athletes that Wadley has. So it's Wadley's to lose in that classification. But one thing I have noticed is Elba's playing better defensively, Brett. They gave up a ton of points earlier in the year and couldn't seem to right the ship on that side of the ball. They're playing way better, not giving up anywhere near as many points. So we'll see if that carries over because Alvin Henderson's going to get his. I mean, you hold him to 230 for 3 touchdowns, you've done a good job. You get that to the state championship game and play well defensively, you got a chance to win it. I think I'd be shocked if it's not Wadley and Elba when it all comes down to the end.
All right, get out and watch a playoff game tonight. It's always fun. It's going to be cold out there, so bundle up. It's finally got a little bit of a coolness in the air here in late November. It's been a while since we've seen some cold weather. But anyway, appreciate everybody, all your comments and watching every day. Again, remind everybody to subscribe to our YouTube channel out there. Make sure you subscribe to the Auburn Blitz YouTube channel and keep that coming in. Keep your comments coming in every day. Randy and I will be on at noon today for Auburn Blitz. We'll have Jason Caldwell on the program. We'll have a special guest at the end of the show, one of our partners that we're partnered with. Really neat business, Randy. You and I went in there. Everybody will just have to stay tuned for that coming up at noon. Then we'll do Saturday Sports Countdown in the morning. And then we'll have a reaction show after Texas A&M, buddy. We just live on this thing. But we love it. We enjoy it, and we're glad that you do as well. And I'll let you finish up.
Well, got a couple of sponsors. Keep in touch. We'll be at Bunkers here middle of December on Friday. If you're a business in the Auburn community or the Lake Martin community or really anywhere out there that would like for us to come out on a Friday and do a remote for our Auburn Blitz program from 12 to 1, reach out to us. Bunkers is one that we'll be heading to in a couple of weeks. It's a wonderful location on West Glen and Auburn. If you haven't been by, you'll be shocked when you walk through the front door at how nice this place is. So stop by and see them, and you can see all the printing going on behind me, Brett. I keep saying elections matter, and elections have mattered for us in Dadeville, Alabama. The faucet turned on, and when it turned on, I hope it doesn't stop. But we've got a lot of printing going on down here with screen printing and embroidery behind me with our Lee Apparel business. If you've got advertising budgets that you'd like to spend to get some swag heading into the 2025 year, we'd like to talk to you. And Sign Source, we can design a sign and put it up, print it, do everything in between. 256-825-0197. Really hard at work and adding a location over in the Auburn community. We feel like it's going to happen in the next month to 2 months, and we'll pass that along right here as we do that, as I'll probably be there a lot more, Brett. Looking forward to it. Auburn's been good to us, and we hope to be good back to Auburn once we get over in that community.
John wants to know, do you do a picture coffee mug? Can you do a picture coffee mug?
We can't here. Are you wanting a picture of Brett on the coffee mug,
Why
John?
wouldn't you want one of me on there? He needs something to stick out on the porch to scare all the crows away, man.
We do have a new DTF machine here in Dadeville. For those of you that don't know what that is, we can take a photo and print that out and do pretty much what the old school heat transfer that you saw at Russell Retail.
Right.
We can print those off individually, so it's
I
nowhere
can still
near.
Smell that. I can still smell that, by the way.
I can too, and I love going in there and picking through different designs.
It was cool, man.
We're planning on doing that in Auburn. When we get there, we're going to have a certain amount of garments that we'll keep, and trying to figure it out from an Auburn University standpoint how you can purchase those DTFs in, and you can come in and pick them and have the garments there. So that's something we're in the talks of doing. I used to love to do it.
Right.
When I'd go in there, it was a begging on which ones of them I could get.
Every time.
I still remember exactly where it was, and
I do too.
I think a lot of people enjoyed that part of that business.
Yeah, they did. They did. Bringing it back. Things come full circle, man.
They do.
They come full circle. That means Auburn's going to come back. If it comes full circle, it's Auburn's going to come back. Yeah, they're going to come back. We got to let's stay positive, man. It's Friday.
We're already here in basketball, so
yeah. That's right.
That's where I am, buddy.
I got to get our football program back. I love basketball, but damn, it just drives me crazy, man, not having a good football team. Good Lord. All right, everybody have a good Friday, good weekend, and we'll see you at noon for Auburn Blitz.